So we talked earlier, I talked earlier about innovation and value proposition. I want to drill down a little bit more on innovation here. If you are thinking, when you're thinking about innovation for your business idea, don't focus just on technology innovation. Of course, technology innovation is very valuable and important for startup companies. And if you have a great technology innovation, this should certainly feature strongly in your innovation. But there are many other types of innovation that you can drive the growth of a scalable business on. And in fact, some of the most successful startups in the world today are basically business model innovation driven. So startups like Uber, Airbnb, although they have some technology innovation, their most fundamental innovation is a business model innovation. So if you can have if you have an idea for an innovative business model linked with an innovative product, this can be tremendously powerful in driving your scalable startup. And there are other areas for innovation in your startup. The process innovation, operational innovation, customer experience innovation like Starbucks that we talked about before, process innovation, etc. So think broadly about innovation. Don't just always look for technology innovation when you're trying to generate innovative business ideas. Drilling down on value proposition. So value proposition, we can divide into three categories. The value proposition, if you remember from our earlier slides, talks about what is the painful problem that this company is solving for customers. And there are degrees of pain in problems that the company can be solving for customers. The most painful painful problem solved by value proposition we call painkiller. So companies who solve extremely painful problems for customers, we view their products as painkillers. Companies that that help solve the problem that customers might have of they want to increase the degree of pleasure in their life, we call vitamins. And companies that create impulse buy products or that don't solve painful problems for customers, we can think of as candy. So where would you like to be with your startup is in the painkiller category. Now, why is solving a painful problem so important for a scalable startup? Because pain drives demand. When customers consider what product to buy next, the first category of product that they consider buying is products that solve painful customer problems. This can be very clearly illustrated if we look at one category of innovative product that takes this to the extreme. So I'll give an example of a startup company that is developing a product with a very strong value proposition. This company has been developing its product for 10 years, developing and testing the product for 10 years. The company has no revenue and has only been in research, development, and testing for the entire life of the company. They've raised tens of millions of dollars in venture capital, and they have never gotten a single customer. And in fact, they will never sell a single unit of their product. However, they will be purchased in a trade sale tomorrow for $400 million by a much larger company in the same sector as this startup. What is this company's product? It's a new pharmaceutical drug. Pharmaceutical drug startups focus on research, development, testing, and regulatory approval for new drugs. And once they pass through several levels of clinical trials for their drugs, prove that they're safe and effective, they are acquired by large pharmaceutical companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, you might wonder, why are large pharmaceutical companies willing to buy these startups for so much money when they haven't achieved any of the normal metrics that we associate with startup company success, like customers or revenue? The reason is the pharmaceutical company has dramatically reduced the risk in buying this startup that there will be insufficient demand for the product. Why? If the pharmaceutical drug startup has developed a drug that is a safe and effective treatment for a disease or condition for which there doesn't currently exist a safe or effective treatment, it is extremely likely that a very high percentage of the total addressable market for this product will buy it. And that's the power of pain-killing value propositions. In that case, we may be solving for a physically painful problem, and obviously painful problem because it deals with disease or illness or physical conditions. But what about a company like Facebook? If this theory of pain-killing value proposition is correct, that customers will seek to alleviate pain first, and that will drive demand for product, we should see that a product like Facebook, which has more than billion users today, is solving a painful problem for those customers. But the pain that Facebook is addressing, or has started addressing in the early days of the company, is not so obvious as a pharmaceutical drug. But in fact, Facebook, at the most fundamental level, does address a painful customer problem, which is loneliness, because Facebook enables people to connect with other people that they know and helps them stay connected with those people, which helps users feel less lonely. And although we don't often think of loneliness as a disease or illness, but in fact, loneliness is a very painful condition, and people who suffer from extreme amounts of loneliness can actually have severe physical problems. So this is another example of how solving a painful customer problem creates an extremely successful product. If you're not solving a painful customer problem, then you're going to have a difficult time in generating sufficient demand for your startup company. So focus on this first. You have an innovative product, you solve a painful problem for customers. Value propositions can also be broken down by degrees of recognition. So not every customer pain is recognized by the customer to the same degree. So we can imagine, or we can posit a spectrum of degrees of recognition of customer pain, from a latent problem, meaning the customer has a problem but doesn't know it, all the way through a vision where the customer knows they have a problem, is actively seeking and has actually had an idea for solving the problem, and is using some sort of homegrown solution to this problem, but is prepared to pay for a better solution. This condition, or this position on the degrees of recognition spectrum for value proposition, can be a very good indication that there will be sufficient demand for this product. I'll give an example from my own experience. Back in the early 2000s, I was traveling on a regular basis from Singapore to Philadelphia and New York, and I had to stay a couple of weeks on these trips, and found that it was super expensive to stay in a hotel in one of these cities for 2 weeks. So I thought, wow, with internet, there should be some way for me to find less expensive short-term accommodation for these trips. And in fact, I did find it on Craigslist, which you probably know is a classified listing that allows people to sell anything on the internet, including short-term accommodation. So I was really excited because I now had a product that solved my painful customer problem here, which was I am I'm experiencing the pain of having to spend way too much money to stay for 2 weeks in a city. So this solution was good, but it wasn't great. Why? There were some serious lacks in the Craigslist solution to my short-term accommodation problem because it wasn't specifically designed to do this. It was specifically designed to allow people to sell anything to other people on internet. And specifically, some of the problems I was having with Craigslist short-term accommodation was no consistent pictures of what the accommodation was going to look like, so I could get there and be surprised in a not positive way. And 2 trust issues, because there was always a challenge of who's going to move first. So would I pay first and then get the key when I got there? Or would I get the key and then pay after I got the key? And of course, each side of this transaction wanted the other side to go first. And I did have some bad experience where I lost the deposit that I had placed on one unit that I stayed at and unable to recover it. So shortly thereafter, I discovered Airbnb, and Airbnb solved all these problems. And I switched Airbnb for short-term accommodation, relatively longer-term stays, and never looked back for a minute to Craigslist. So you can see where a purpose-built solution to this painful problem was exactly what I was looking for, and enabled the company to grow very quickly. Obviously, there were many other people having a similar customer pain.